President Biden is taking part in events to honor our fallen military. Earlier, he delivered his Memorial Day address at Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. Let's listen.
On this day, we came together again to reflect, to remember, but above all, to recommit to the future they fought for, a future grounded in freedom, democracy, opportunity, and equality, not just for some, but for all. America is the only country in the world founded on an idea that all people are created equal and deserve to be treated equally throughout their lives. We've never fully lived up to that, but we've never, ever, ever walked away from it. Every generation, our fallen heroes have brought us closer.
Before speaking, he participated in the annual wreath laying at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. The memorial is the final resting place for one of America's unidentified World War I service members and is known as a site for reflection on military service. CBS News correspondent Skyler Henry joins us now from the White House. So, Skyler, what can you tell us about how the president is marking this Memorial Day?
Hey, Lindsay, good to be with you. Yeah, just to pick up on what the president said there, he also went on to say that freedom is not guaranteed and that every generation has to fight for it. It's sort of been the theme of the weekend, if you will, as the president has made several stops, also giving a commencement this past weekend at West Point. But to talk about what's happening today, as you pointed out, the president addressing those there at Arlington National Cemetery. Earlier, he, along with the vice president and the defense secretary and other top officials, laid a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and before that he shared a bite with several veterans, other military officials, top administration officials as well as members of Gold Star families, as he looked to try to honor those who have given their ultimate sacrifice, if you will, today. And remember, this is a subject, an area that is very near and dear to the president. Remember, his son Bo served in the U.S. Army. He passed nearly 9 years ago. In fact, the president will likely honor him later on this week, but this is something that he has certainly carried with him, certainly on the campaign trail and during moments such as this.
And the president did talk about the personal impact, and he touted some of his administration's efforts to support veterans. But how much support does the president have from veterans?
Yeah, that's a good question, especially considering that, at least historically, that veteran voters tend to lean Republican when they do so, at least according to recent surveys and polling that we've looked at, especially exit polling. At least in 2020, we know that the president made some significant gains, if you will, having some 44% of the vote compared to former President Donald Trump's 54%. But this is something that we expect for President Biden to continue to carry on the campaign trail. Just last week, he was up in New Hampshire touting what the administration has been able to accomplish in terms of getting the PACT Act across the finish line, if you will, and that is helping certain veterans who were exposed to toxic burn pits during their service better access to treatment. And we know that the president has certainly wanted to get something done in that area for some time, especially considering that his son Bo died from brain cancer after believed to be in close proximity to those toxic burn pits. And so I think we will continue to see that sort of rhetoric, that sort of messaging moving forward. And remember this, Lindsay, this is also a president who has tried to juxtapose himself from his competition, in this case the former president, saying that the former president doesn't respect the military. I talked about that commencement address over the weekend at West Point. Well, the president not so subtly took a bit of a jab at the former president, talking about what the graduating class of 2020 had to say about protecting democracy and being apolitical after they were disappointed after the former president and his decision-making following what we saw here, actually, in Washington, D.C., when he went across the park here to pose with that Bible and using military force to remove some peaceful protesters from this area. And so I think that that is some of the rhetoric that we will continue to hear from President Biden, just trying to juxtapose why he respects the military and why he believes the former president does not.
So Trump spoke at the Libertarian National Convention over the weekend. What was he hoping to gain from that address? Kind of feels like he's talking to maybe some people that he wouldn't have in a typical, not that he's ever really campaigned typically, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. You know, untraveled paths, roads less traveled, we'll call it that. The former president certainly making some history, given that he is the first first current or former president to speak at a third-party convention. But here's how he was received.
The Libertarian Party should nominate Trump for President of the United States. Whoa, that's nice.
Boos and hecklers, Lindsay. That is certainly something that I think the former president is certainly not accustomed to along the campaign trail. Some of his supporters call it a good strategy, though, trying to make the case to be in front of audiences that he wouldn't otherwise be in front of. Remember, he was also in the Bronx a couple of days ago trying to make his case to Black and Latino voters as well. In fact, one of the top VP, considerations in terms of picks, the South Carolina Senator Tim Scott was on the airwaves over the weekend calling this a good strategy, saying that Republicans, if they're going to win in November, they have to go, quote unquote, where they are not invited. So we'll see how impactful that is in terms of the former president's strategy. Remember, this could very well be a pivotal week for him as jury deliberations in that so-called hush money trial up in New York are set to begin tomorrow. We'll see ultimately what that looks like. If he were to be convicted guilty, obviously that would be historic in and of itself. And obviously this could very well be another round of politicization that could be carried as well. We'll see what happens.
Skyler Henry, thank you.
You bet.